Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, December 18th, 2019 meeting of the Lake Havasu City Planning and Zoning Commission. If you'd please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Jim Harris.
I'm here.
Lucas Steele.
I'm here.
Michael Gordon. Doug Hardy. Donald Bergen.
Here.
Dan McGowan.
Here.
Chad Nelson.
Here.
Susanna Ballard. Here. Danny White. Kevin Murphy.
Okay, since we have a couple of vacancies, Ms. Ballard, would you please come and join us at the dais here? Okay, the minutes of the last meeting, are there any additions, corrections, deletions by any of the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Still, a second by Mr. McGowan to approve last minute's meetings. Any further discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and place our votes.
Motion passes.
Motion passed. All right, correspondence and announcements. Mr. Morris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Just a little update. I do have one thing. From the previous meeting, the conditional use permit was approved for the Yard City property. And one of the conditions of that was before their next First Friday event, which was this December event, they're supposed to have the parking lot cleared up and cleaned up. Here's a photo of it 2 days before the First Friday event, and it looks, they've removed the big rocks, and they've got it so people can actually park and use it. So just wanted to give you that update. They are moving forward with the conditions of that use permit. Thank you.
Okay, any other correspondence and announcements? Okay.
No, thank you.
Let me just read this little blurb here. This is a public hearing, and there is a structured order to the proceeding. City staff will present each item. There will be time for the commission to ask questions of the staff, and then the applicant, which in this case today is going to be the city, will have the opportunity to present their case to the commission. That being done, we will then open the proceeding to the public for their questions and input. I would ask that anyone in the public that wishes to speak limit their trips to the podium and microphone to one only, keep all comments to less than 5 minutes, and to stay on point and not discuss subject matter that is not pertinent to the decision being considered here today. After public testimony is taken, I will then close the public hearing and bring the motion back to the table for city staff's recommendation, discussion amongst the commission, and eventually a motion to approve or disapprove. The first item, and I believe the only item on today's agenda, is a request for multiple amendments to Lake Havasu City Code Title 14 Zoning, the Development Code, Section 14.03.02, Permitted Use Table, Table 3-1, including but not limited to the following uses. And I am not going to read them all. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Morris.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Yes, that is a lengthy introduction. I'm glad you didn't have to read it all. There are a number of uses. Let me take a step back a little bit. Our development code was amended and updated in 2016. Since that time, there have been a number of changes that have happened since then, just given the breadth of all the changes to the development code. A couple of years ago, in 2017, there were about a dozen changes here and there, and then in 2018, there were 8 additional changes. So a development code needs time to, in practical usage, day-to-day uses, needs time to get refined. At this point, we've come up with a number of uses over the past 3 years that don't quite fit right or correctly seem into the development code, into the permitted uses table. Among those specifically are adding medical offices and clinics to the mixed-use UMS district, possibly separating animal boarding and animal care, so they're separate categories, adding alcoholic beverage sales to the commercial health district, and then potentially adding caretakers or watchman quarters as an accessory use. So those were 4 changes we knew we would like to bring forward to the commission, and we thought, well, if we're bringing those 4 forward, this might be a good time to look at the table overall and see if there are other changes here and there that may make sense to make changes now. So with that, we said, okay, well, the previous meeting we gave you information, the permitted uses table with some proposed changes marked in them, and then copies of the specific use-specific standards that go along with some of those uses, as well as the definition section of the code. So we can look at all those together, because changes to the use table may impact the use-specific standards for that use, and then those also may impact the definition. So we made it, make sure those all line up and make sense with each other. So with that, we have the development code table here that shows the permitted uses, and in this graphic we have the different zoning districts that are going across the top, and they're roughly based on the type of use. So residential uses, mixed use, and then special purpose, which are like the general commercial and those sorts of uses. And then the different types of uses are coming down. There's 3 pages of this use table, and if you cross-reference the type of use and then the zoning district, you'll see there's letter designations. If it's blank, that means it's not an allowed use. If it has the letter P, that means it's a permitted use with the proper development, improvements to the property. A conditional use is a C. That means it may have to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a hearing. And if an accessory use is an A, that means in conjunction with the primary use that's allowed, they may be able to have this as an accessory use. And then the letter T is temporary use, which is a temporary, short-term use that is not a permanent sort of use. So going through this table, everything that's in here is what's existing. Anything that's highlighted is a potential change. So highlighted with the letter P means we're looking at residential care facility, possibly allowing those as permitted uses in all the mixed use zoning districts. That means these are zoning districts. In this case, mixed use means residential, commercial could be together on the same property. So you'll see P's, they're highlighted. Letter A, that's highlighted. Anything highlighted is asking to be added or changed. Funeral home or mortuary, it was a conditional use permit, so that's lined out with a C, and the letter P is inserted. So we're looking to add that as a permitted use. So with your indulgence, if you don't mind, maybe we can just go through the table with the changes, or however the commission would like to move forward with it.
Just for clarification, so what you're saying is the highlighted items are the ones that the city or we are looking at today, adding or changing to the existing code.
The highlighted items are things that staff went through and said, hey, these kind of maybe make sense. Let's bring it to the commission. If there are other items that you want to look at, you can certainly look at those too.
Is this says page 1 of 3. Are there 2 other pages with these highlighted items?
Right, here's the first page, the second page, and then the third page.
Good Lord.
Wow.
Wow.
We probably are not going to get through all these in one session.
And it was more of a homework session, I think, but that's okay.
I didn't get that.
That's okay. So
I would suggest that maybe we just start at the first one, residential care, the 4 Ps there,
all right.
and just go line by line
And things that maybe need more explanation, there's some comments on the side here. So in residential care facility, the reason this came up, we want to change the definition to be, right now it says if it's 6 or more, it's to make it a residential, 6 or fewer, it could be a residential care facility. But that's not in line with the building and the fire codes. They say 5 or fewer. If there's 6 or more, then it needs fire sprinklers and other requirements. So it seemed to make sense to change that to 5 instead of 6. The current definition of residential care facility is 6 or more, which is not really in line with the requirements of the fire department. There are other requirements that kick in at 6 or more people, 5 or fewer. So that
I would submit that that's irrelevant.
Is there a legal ramification to 6 when it comes to fair housing and group housing?
Yes, when we did all the research to put it together, yes, there were certain legal parameters that we used when establishing what those numbers were. Did I look at it before I came to the meeting today? No. But I know that when we've done this in the past, there were specific reasons why we did what we did.
I recall the Redmond House being
Yes.
a big legal hurdle at 6 or more.
Yes.
Whether our code states that or not, I think it's important to probably comply with what legal precedence has already set in terms of, just my suggestion, because as a city, we say 5 and courts are saying you can't discriminate until if there's less than 6.
If I may, the 5 comes about because of the fire sprinkler option. And I would submit that it's irrelevant whether it's 5 or 6 with regards to the fire sprinkler aspect. If they go to 6 and the code calls for 5 or more requiring a fire sprinkler, they have to retrofit. So I don't see a need to take it down to 5, leave it at 6, in my opinion. Because if we take it to 5, we are limiting the amount of people that can be in a care facility. And I'm here to tell you that these care facilities are a needed use in this community. And 6 is even probably not enough in some instances.
Luke, how do you feel about that?
Well, it basically means the applicants for these care facilities have to be aware that because that they're going to 6 or more, they may have to have improvements, fire sprinklers and that sort of thing. So it's a matter of communication to them or for them to be aware of what's required. So if the fair, I mean, you're the commission. If you say 6, that's fine. I think that is the threshold, I think, for the Fair Housing Act. But it's just more information that these care homes need to be aware of.
Well, rather than, excuse me for interrupting, rather than restricting them to 5, keep it at the 6, and it's just going to be on you to, or the city to inform them that if you're going to go to 6, there are upgrades that you're going to have to do to the facility if they don't already have them.
Yep. And that sometimes catches them by surprise. And
Yeah.
yes,
Well, it is what it is.
When they come talk to us, we'll make sure they're aware of that, or
Right.
try the best we can. A lot of times they do their own research and then they apply, and then it's a surprise. So we try to minimize surprises, as you know.
Well, rather than
developers.
restricting them to the 5, which
Right.
may make their facility not pencil out, leave it at the 6, and here's what you have to do to accommodate that.
Okay, we can certainly
That's
move on. We can
certainly one commissioner's opinion.
I would agree with that. And then if we're done with that, I know we have to move fast today because we have a lot to go over, but the line right above that is a little concerning to me, that we have continuing care retirement communities, a non-permitted use in any existing zone without a conditional use permit.
Okay.
It seems like a pretty light type of use, and it seems to be very much in conformance with multifamily, and we don't even have it as a conditional use permit for multifamily zoning.
So what are you saying?
I think we should use, certainly for multifamily zoning where we don't have it even in there as a conditional use permit right now, I would suggest that should be a flat out permissible use unless there's some kind of medical care component with that, that maybe that justifies the commercial. But even then, you look at the commercial uses in the mixed use neighborhood or any of the mixed use neighborhoods, it's conditional use only. It seems like there should be a couple zones where this is a permitted use.
Yeah, I would.
Light industrial as well.
If you want to build residential and light industrial, I guess, but it certainly, at least in the multifamily, because that's what it is it's multiple people living together in a
Yeah.
residential type of atmosphere. So
Well, I see a lot of light industrial lots right in between condos
yeah,
and
you're right. It's
things like that
they
in
border
Havasu.
multifamily. So
Well, if I may, the continuing care retirement community, you're right, it says conditional use permit. There are a number of, in the residential zoning districts, it's allowed with a conditional use permit in the R2, the R3, and the RM multiple family zonings. And then in all the mixed use, not mixed use, the residential transects of the UMS, the CHD, and the commercial health in Southgate. And then the mixed use neighborhood and the mixed use UMS district. So there are some allowances for conditional use permits in those zonings.
There's just no permitted use in our zoning table.
Maybe those should just be outright permitted uses,
And then-
because it is multifamily.
Maybe-
I would say R3 and above.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say exactly what Chad just said, just
I
because of
agree.
the density requirement. And a lot of these frankly are gonna be over the density of even RM, and they'll have to come in and get a PD anyway, but
Well, look, I've got the definitions here, if you don't mind, we can look at the
yeah, if you could read the
continuing
definition.
care.
Yeah, please do.
So here's a continuing care community. A large-scale facility or integrated group of facilities that provides retirement-age persons a continuum of accommodations and care from independent living to convalescent care and long-term skilled nursing care. This use typically includes a full range of living arrangements from independent living, congregate housing, residential care, and skilled nursing, and sometimes hospice care. It also provides a range of ancillary facilities and services such as healthcare, meals with common dining facilities, physical therapy, education, recreation, or other social and cultural activities.
So with that definition, I would change a little bit. I misread the book here. That was the RMH where we didn't have, and that's fine. There are some commercial uses within that definition that are probably not typical of a multifamily use. So I guess it does make a little more sense from that standpoint. I still think in the mixed use neighborhoods though, where we are allowing commercial uses, there should be a permitted use somewhere.
All right, what's the,
I would recommend that
Which is the mixed use
MUN, the
residential?
neighborhood mixed use, and the mixed use general, both should probably allow it.
so just if I may indulge, the mixed-use neighborhood, mixed-use general, the idea behind mixed-use neighborhood is like it's a residential neighborhood that has some commercial uses. That's the way I think of it. Mixed-use general says basically it's more of a commercial feel that has some residential uses allowed. So with that in mind, it says the mixed-use neighborhood allows them with the conditional use permit. So that's basically, hey, if you have a residential sort of mixed use, they're allowed with a conditional use permit. If you have a commercial type mixed use, then they're not allowed. So
Okay.
if that's what if you want to add that somewhere, if the commission feels that's something that.
I would
add or
make the
change?
recommendation that we change the MUN to a P instead of a C.
Are you sure? Isn't that,
That's the neighborhood where he said it's mostly residential with some commercial, which is when you read the definition, there's some commercial components, small commercial components too.
or isn't that mixed use general? Because neighborhood, that's what we
That's where he's saying it's
zoned
mostly residential.
Riviera.
Yeah, but and Riviera has some small commercial components to it, so same thing. This is mostly residential with some small commercial components.
In the Riviera area, I believe they have a mixed-use general, and then I don't remember the other zoning, but there's a mixed-use general in
It was
there too,
mixed
I
use
believe.
neighborhood.
Mixed-use neighborhood, all right.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, Riviera was entitled before we went through these.
Yeah,
other
right.
changes.
Yes, it was.
Right.
Um,
We had to make a decision there.
That's my recommendation. If we don't change it, it's not the end of the world, but
I don't see a problem with that. And since this is not, I don't think we need to have a vote for every one of these items. We can just come to a consensus with the commission.
Does that work?
In the end, we do, yes, in the end, we do. But for discussion of each individual item, a consensus should be fine.
Yep, fine. Someone kind of take notes on what you're adding. That's different from here, so
Thank
you
you.
know when we make your motion what you're voting for or not voting for. If you have any issues with what's being part of the consensus.
Thank you, Ms. Gary. Appreciate it. So, anybody else have any objection to modifying that?
I don't have any objection. I would include it permitted in light industrial as well.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay,
So,
so light industrial, MUN
And MUG.
and MUG, outright permitted,
as permitted by right, okay,
yep.
all right.
And we're gonna rely on you to take
I'm
copious notes.
being the scribe right now.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so with regards to residential care facility, do we have any problem with putting the permitted uses for the 4 suggested?
I don't.
Anybody?
I just had to go back one more time. If those are all permitted uses and we're gonna tell older folks that they can't be permitted uses straight across the board, just like pretty much residential care facility, what is the difference there, Luke?
Residential care facility,
You know what I mean, Jim? It's,
Yeah, I
Well, you
see
have
what you're saying.
where'd I go? The skilled nursing, the, education.
yeah, but we're talking about a commercial medical district, right?
residential care facility is a facility providing residential, social, or personal care, custody, or treatment to more than six individuals, not related to the operator with limited ability for self-care, but where medical care is not a major element. Includes children's homes, transitional homes, orphanages, rehab centers, self-help group homes, convalescent homes, and then, period, and then convalescent homes, nursing homes, and similar facilities providing medical care are included under a different definition called medical services extended care, so.
And we also included it in the definition that we just talked about for,
Yeah, they're kind of
for
contradicting.
continuing care too.
Yeah.
But I don't see how we separate those two things.
No, you can't.
I just think whatever that line says, and right now it's pretty consistent, the 3 Ps under the residential higher density districts are RUMS, I would just match those 2 lines to be exactly the same.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
So continuing care, retirement, and residential care facilities,
Okay,
all those categories, I would have them be exactly the same. Where you have CCC, we have CCC above it, that's
Okay.
already the same. And then you go to UMS, CHD, and Southgate District, we have conditional uses versus outright permitted uses. I would make those be the same, permitted uses across the board.
across here,
I would make all the permitted uses we're suggesting, the highlighted Ps, BPs.
Talking all of these Ps
Yeah.
and then all of these Ps.
I think so, Jim, because otherwise we're trying to discriminate
Yeah.
between 2 very similar
I
type of
agree.
cares based on age.
I don't disagree.
Sorry, Luke.
that's right. I'll make sure I'm scribing this correctly.
So
Well, we'll find out.
what Luke is saying is under your, let's start at the bottom, the residential care facility, the
All right.
first one, where we've got the 4 proposed Ps,
Yes,
do 4 proposed Ps immediately above those.
okay,
And the same thing to the left, the next 3 columns, where we have 3 Ps below, those 3 Cs need to be 3 Ps also.
all right.
I don't
And we're gonna-
disagree with his logic.
And add a P for light industrial under
And
residential
then a
care
P for
facility.
light industrial in both of those columns.
I just think these 2 columns should match exactly, Luke, because they just seem like they're very similar type of
Well, okay,
definitions with the major not discriminating, but the major difference being age.
well, I have a little concern in that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some other things. I don't
So
want to shorten it.
you're
to
well
stage,
aware
but
of what we've
yes.
gone through before and what we've established for what's up there. And so it's opening that door, and as long as particularly you would be comfortable with the areas that you're providing for, that's the major difference between those, not age.
Okay. You don't see any problem though, Kelly, making these 2 things match each other?
No, because trying to apply that logic to the whole entire schedule or the table is very difficult. We try to make them as even as we can, but in zoning we do get to consider the uses and how those affect those zoning in the areas and how they affect those that surround it. So there are going to be some differences. Now, can there be arguments based on that? Absolutely, and that's when we go through the discrimination and those types of challenges, and we try to avoid those. But at the same time, when we know there are particularly sensitive items within our community, zoning is the way that we can kind of regulate some of that.
I won't go into this again. I just
Yeah,
think these
no.
2 particular categories are a little bit.
And I think you're making great arguments, and as long as the commission feels comfortable at that, you're okay with opening those areas to those types of uses, that's great.
Okay.
Are there any objections to that? Anybody?
I don't have any objections, just, you know, we just have to be cognizant that, you know, staff will have to be really on
A
their
little more
toes.
vigilant
Yeah,
in their-
because I would assume that most of the reasons why they're not just permitted is because it's a little bit easier to have a conditional use permit. So you can regulate things like, sprinklers and parking. And
Exactly.
things
And
like
I mean,
that.
that's a really good thing to think about. So when those uses come and they want to be in particular areas, when it comes to a conditional use permit, then it comes before you and you get to put certain conditions on it that you think are important or reasonable or necessary to protect the neighboring areas and even if it's in itself from those uses. So when you make it outright permitted, then there's no process that they necessarily have to go through with the city.
And that's what I'm concerned about is in a residential scenario like that there can't be any specific parking requirements or things like that.
Well, I think there are specific parking requirements just via code.
Closer to the mic.
And what I would say about continuing care retirement is that the densities are so high that they're probably gonna have to get a PD anyway, or they aren't gonna wanna park it for as much as a multifamily zone would require for parking, and they're gonna have to come in for a PD anyway to get that variance. So I still feel comfortable with them being permitted uses. More than anything, I still feel like they need to reflect similar decisions for the two types of uses.
I guess what Luke's saying is the bottom line is the majority of the properties out there in the community are going to require more consideration for higher density that, they're not going to be able to meet parking requirements and some of those things. So that in itself is going to trigger a conditional use request. Is that a correct
or would it?
assessment?
Typically, the mechanism to get around or deal with shortcomings in the development code, like do not have enough parking on site, could be a planned development rezone for the property because you're asking for an exception from the underlying development codes. And a mechanism for that could be the planned development rezone. It's based on a specific development plan that would come forward.
And in my experience, Luke, the densities with this aren't going to fit in any one of these zones if it's a true. So it's going to require a planned development almost in every situation.
Yes, that could be the case. And if I might also add just a further, the request was also add permitted uses under light industrial. This category is overall called residential uses, and typically we don't see residential uses in the light industrial. Just throwing it out there. It seems like it may not be the most appropriate zoning for it, but if that's what you want to.
Well, light industrial does allow condos, right?
Light industrial, no. It doesn't. It does permit on this table what's called dwelling, live, work, which is like a caretaker's facility, is what the idea was. The previous code said in the industrial areas we can have a caretaker facility. This code didn't deal specifically with caretaker facilities. That's why we're looking at those as a specific topic. And we would anticipate that P would probably go away when we get to the discussion about caretaker facilities and accessory use. The light industrial permitted live work would go away on that column. And so that would leave the only industrial, that would leave no industrial zoning that allowed residential uses, which sort of makes sense from my planning standpoint.
Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were referring to the fact that there's a lot of light industrial that's bordering multifamily, and a lot of times that does get switched over via zoning change before they build, I think.
Like
So,
right up on Bahama, you've got condos,
very
light
familiar.
industrial, condos.
Very familiar, and we feel like we could get a rezone to light industrial from that RM or vice versa
Sure.
if we wanted to, but I think we could probably leave that in the code, just to keep, to Luke's point, residential uses are pretty much outright prohibited in the industrial zone with the exception of that dwelling.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because if they wanted to rezone it, I wouldn't have an issue with rezoning it to a residential component.
Yeah.
So. I don't
Individually.
I don't have an issue with that.
One item I'd like to ask.
Mr.
about
Bergen.
Is, if we're talking about the residential care facility in the R2 being changed from a C to a P. And I would just point out that very often an R2 is adjacent to an R1.
I think we had
We're gonna leave
decided
that.
that we were gonna leave R2 alone and
Yeah.
only go R3 and above.
Okay. I didn't catch that. Okay,
No
fine.
problem.
I agree with that.
Okay, we pass that?
Yep.
All right.
So you've got it down what we're gonna do.
Well, I have in my notes that, here we go, residential, continuing care, I have no changes here.
Correct.
Correct.
Those are all stay as they are. In this case, these are gonna change from C to P,
Correct.
and these are gonna add the Ps here and
Correct.
change these and add, so these are all Ps. So
Correct.
they're the same. I have that. And the
And then-
industrial, no change, not allowed,
Okay.
right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have that. Thank you.
Okay, moving along to clubs, lodges, and private meeting halls.
Yes, so looking at the mixed-use districts, mix of commercial and residential, it just seemed like, well, clubs, lodges, and private meeting halls, why should they not be allowed? I mean, it seems like that would maybe be appropriate in any mixed-use zoning district. What the commission's thought on that. And then, under golf course, maybe as an accessory use to the golf course, private meeting halls, lodges, or clubs.
Mr. Still, did you have something?
I don't have a problem with any of those things, Luke. The golf course thing, I guess, brings up a question. It seems like a club, a lodge is almost necessary as part of a golf course, but
Like a rec hall or
I
something
mean,
like that?
yeah.
Restaurant?
Are we talking, when we say lodges, does that mean like hotel type component, a bed and play and stay kind of thing for them, or?
I think of a lodge like a fraternal organization or something.
Yeah. Yeah, not,
Yeah,
Let's go to the definitions.
not a residential lodge,
yeah, I got you.
What's the definition of
It's
a
not
lodge?
lodging, yeah.
not
Okay.
lodging.
Let's see here, where's my definitions? Was it clubs?
It'd be like the Elks or the Eagles or Masons.
All right, buildings and facilities owned or operated by a legal entity or association of persons operating on a membership basis for social, civic, cultural, religious, literary, political, recreational, professional, or other similar purposes to promote the interest of its members, but not operated primarily for profit or to render a service that is customarily carried on by a business, or carried on as a business, or requires licensing by a government agency. So I think of it as like fraternal organizations, that sort of thing, or other clubs.
I shouldn't even wasted our time on that. Those
We
are
weren't
good.
gonna say that. Okay, so going back to the chart,
Are we good there?
I'm good with that.
Okay. So we're on to community centers.
so moving along to community centers.
There are a number here that are added possibly in the golf course as accessory uses, just because golf course properties lend themselves, or golf course zoning lends itself to other potential uses. And this would be, say, as an accessory use to a golf course. I mean, whatever the commission feels on that.
I don't see a problem with any of those accessory uses in the golf course column under community service.
The only thing I would say about it, Jim, just for discussion, is where do those commercial type of uses get placed within the 210 acres that we're talking? I think that's the only golf course zoning we have in town, right?
Right.
Where do those get placed?
That's up to the owner of the
Golf course?
golf course. And typically, I would submit that they're usually centralized. So, if you're gonna have a daycare facility,
It needs to have parking next to it.
it has to have parking, so it's all gonna be centralized right next to the clubhouse.
And if I may, there are building setbacks in the golf course zoning. I believe it's 50 feet from the property line.
Right.
You're right about that.
So I think we're covered.
Yeah.
So anybody have any problem with the accessory uses in the golf course column under community service? There's 4 of them. I guess we're good on that, Luke.
Okay.
So
thank you.
moving down to, I guess would be funeral home or mortuary.
Yeah, currently it's shown as a conditional use permit, but the way they are operated now, it seems like any other building, any other use.
The reason it was conditional, as I understand it, was because some of them operated crematoriums. Is that correct?
I frankly don't know the reason why.
Okay.
That's the way it was in the previous code, so it carried over, and there hasn't been discussion recently about it.
Okay. So you're proposing to make that a outright permitted use in the
That's-
C2, which I don't have a problem with that.
That's correct, thank you.
The next one would be hospital. You're striking the P permitted use from the mixed use.
Mixed use.
Neighborhood?
Neighborhood.
Yeah.
If you have a neighborhood which is primarily residential, it allows some commercial uses. A hospital seems like a really
Reach,
intense
yeah.
use in a mixed
that's-
use neighborhood.
That's fine. Did anybody have any problems with that?
No.
Okay, that's good. Next one is library, changing it to permitted in mixed use UMS. And Mr. Still,
Would like to go back up one line. Hospital, I noticed we have it in the commercial mixed use, but we don't have it in the general mixed use. Is there a reason for that?
The hospital is under
Well, he's striking it out.
the commercial right now, well, the way it's proposed, the hospital would be permitted under the commercial health district, and then it would not be allowed in the other mixed-use districts.
I understand why it wouldn't be in the neighborhood mixed use, but
why not general?
when we described general earlier, it was an intense commercial use, so I'm not understanding that one.
Well, that could be, if the commission wants to explore that and possibly move forward with that, it would be, basically, we're looking at a commercial area that has mixed use, and the residential component in that mixed use general, where's my mouse, here we go, does not allow single family residential, allows some multiple family residential. So in the mixed use general, it would not be unusual to see multiple family apartments or condos above first floor, things like that. So if the commission thinks that might be an appropriate zoning district to allow a hospital, we can certainly
Well,
make that
let me
change.
ask this, is a urgent care or a family health care doctor's office, is that considered hospital or?
That has a different category.
Clinic.
Okay.
It's one of the next pages. There's one here for medical offices and clinics.
Is there something else that you would think that would go in there, or?
I just think if we're gonna allow it in the commercial health district, which is basically uptown and used to be a C2 zoning, whereas this other stuff used to be a C2 zoning, I don't know why we would prohibit it. That, matter of fact, the mixed use general and the mixed use UMS, both of them are the same across the board, so I don't understand why.
I think we should have them in there.
I do too.
In both of those categories?
Yes.
Yes.
Take it out of the neighborhood, but add it to the next 2 columns.
So remove it as it's shown here from the mixed use
Correct.
neighborhood, add it to mixed use general, and add it to mixed use UMS.
Correct.
Correct.
And then there's mixed use channel Riverwalk, which I'm assuming you don't want a hospital down by the channel.
There's some other stuff in that river walk, when you look at it, it would be hard to put a hospital there anyway, in terms of what the requirements are.
Duly noted.
Okay, moving back to the library, or excuse me, the library, museum, or gallery. Adding the permitted use under mixed use UMS, that's fine. And adding permitted use under, what column is that?
It's the IB, the Island Body Beach.
Yes.
It was allowed as an accessory use. I'm not sure what the accessory use, what it would be an accessory use to.
I don't know who'd want to put a library there, but I don't see a problem in allowing it. So, those are okay. long-term medical care facility.
Shall we
You're at-
go to the definition, just to get an
Nah,
idea?
I don't think so. I guess we're going there.
Oh, we don't think so? Okay, that's fine.
So you're adding it to,
So at this point, it's only allowed under commercial health district. And we're proposing to be added to the UMS, mixed-use UMS, and then the commercial Southgate, C1 and C2, and light industrial.
anybody have any problems with any of those additions? I guess we have a consensus, that's good.
Okay. Yay.
Open space park or playground. Adding permitted to,
We said all across.
Everything.
everything, yeah.
Who doesn't like a park and a playground, right?
We're pro playground here.
Why
You
would we,
betcha.
yeah. Do we wanna just to make that permitted in golf course too, or? Do we wanna keep that accessory?
That's funny, because isn't a golf course basically an open space?
That's
Yeah,
what I was
yeah.
thinking.
It's my play, it's my
Probably need
playground.
to change that A to a P.
Yeah,
Will do.
Okay, moving right along, let's go down to animal care and boarding. You're proposing to strike animal care.
Yeah, this one's a little more involved. I'm going to, well, what we received now, animal care and boarding was one category. And we'll go to, I've got a special definition sheet for this, so let's go to that if you don't mind. So the current definition of animal care and boarding is a commercial establishment providing boarding, grooming, training, daycare, and other indoor, non-medical services for domestic pets, primarily dogs and cats and other small animals like rabbits. Outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards, are generally not included in this use. This use includes, but is not limited to, animal training, daycare, kennels, but does not include veterinary hospital. A number of years ago, there was concern about boarding of animals, dog boarding, and some of the changes that came out of that were resulting in the current layout of the table. So it was allowed with a conditional use permit, and it was permitted for outdoor boarding and everything, runs and all that were permitted in industrial, and then it was allowed possibly with a conditional use permit in some other districts. Since that time, we're all aware that there are dog groomers, there are dogs, or pets and animals are big in people's lives. They're a very important part of their lives. And there are a lot of doggy grooming and indoor kind of training facilities that are existing in other districts that technically it says they shouldn't be for whatever reason. They've been there for years. We're trying to break out animal boarding, which we feel is a totally different type of use than animal grooming. And so what we're proposing is to change the definition. Let me go here. Okay. Is to break out the definitions. Break out animal care and boarding, get rid of that definition, and then roll it into two different definitions. One being animal boarding, which is the more intense use, I would say, where you've got dogs there for multiple days on end, and its establishment providing boarding services and care for domestic pets, like dogs and cats and other small animals. And it also includes outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards. It does not include veterinary hospital or boarding of horses, which is a whole different code section. So, and then creating a different category for animal grooming and care. This is establishment providing indoor uses, including grooming, training, and other non-medical services for domestic pets and dogs and cats, and other small animals. Outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards, are not included, and it does not include veterinary hospitals or the grooming or care of horses. Which the horses thing is because those are allowed in the residential, agricultural residential as a separate use. So the idea is, hey, here, if it's animal boarding, like you've got dogs, which are the main animal boarding users, if you will, days on end at a location versus someone taking their pet for grooming and maybe a little training here and there. So the idea is, can we break those apart and then put them into the table in an appropriate location? So the idea is animal boarding would basically stay the same as it was for animal care and boarding, but we would also add, we propose to add a conditional use permit in the UMS. And then animal grooming would be allowed in the mixed, most of the mixed, well, three of the five mixed uses, and then all the commercial type zoning districts as a permitted use. And those would be animal grooming, which are basically indoors, short-term sorts of things.
Okay, so I have a question. Under the previous definition or the current definition of animal care and boarding, did that not also encompass as care, veterinary care?
No, veterinary has a separate category. Veterinarian care.
And how does this affect the grooming within a veterinary care facility?
It does not change that.
Okay, so they're still allowed to have, I didn't mean grooming, boarding within a veterinary care facility.
The veterinary care doesn't really include boarding. It includes the, keeping the animals for because of the, whatever procedure they need. Let's look at the definition. That's my
No, I
take
think it still does. There's boarding on site
on it.
available.
All right, let's see here.
That was one of the things when we changed the code back then. We did not want to eliminate their ability to board on site.
Veterinarian hospital, an establishment that provides medical treatment and care to animals may include temporary or overnight boarding of animals that are recuperating from treatment. Use may include commercial boarding service not related to overnight care in the appropriate zoning district. So you're correct.
Okay.
If we look at the table, if you don't mind, we'll look at the table for veterinarian. It's going to be under animal veterinary hospital. They are permitted in the same areas as animal care and boarding in the industrial, and so they have some here that are allowed under the current zoning. We're proposing, if we segue to that, the veterinary hospital not be allowed in the mixed-use neighborhood. Again, the neighborhood field, we thought that may not be the most appropriate use for a neighborhood, a residential type neighborhood that has commercial uses.
Well, if I'm reaching here, but if you do have, like in a mixed-use neighborhood, a little strip mall or something like that, part of that, that might be an appropriate use for a veterinary clinic.
Jim, similar to the hospital issue we just talked about, maybe in the neighborhood mixed use, because that's primarily residential, we don't allow that, but
Correct.
certainly in the UMS district, if we're gonna allow it
Right,
in mixed use,
I'll go along with that.
just to be consistent.
Yeah. So is there any concerns about splitting out animal grooming and changing, taking out the care from boarding?
I think that's a wise way to handle it.
I think so too.
Okay. We're good with what you've done there.
And if I may, just to clarify, as my role as scribe here, veterinarian hospital, strike out the under mixed use neighborhood and insert the permitted under mixed use UMS.
Correct.
Okay.
Question for you guys.
Mr.
Jumping
Nelson.
down to plant nursery or garden supply.
Where are you at?
It's just 2 lines down from
Okay.
animal grooming. You guys have any issues going from mixed use general over to industrial conditional? Putting conditionals in there? Plant nursery, garden supply.
Yeah, it seems like plant nursery supply was already a permitted use in industrial, because
Yeah.
I've seen it there before.
It's not in there, no.
Should be there.
Should just be permitted or conditional?
I think permitted.
I think permitted. It looks like
Seems-
it's there to me, Chad.
All right. let's see, plant nursery
It's
or
not-
garden is allowed in. Oop, there
Light
we go.
industrial.
Light industrial, but it's blank in
Oh.
industrial, so
Yeah, definitely.
seems like add it to
Should be
industrial.
permitted there. Do you think it should be conditional from mixed use general over? Where it's blank? Seems a little light there to me.
We could put it in there. I think somebody'd have a very hard time with the economics of putting a nursery in the middle of town, which is where that zoning is, but
It really depends on the lot, you know?
yeah, maybe so.
So we're gonna go with, conditional for those three, mixed use general through mixed use CRW.
I would carry it all the way over,
But
leave,
we're gonna,
leave permitted where it is.
but we'll make it permitted through,
All the industrial.
all the industrial.
Yeah,
And then the one I would leave it out of just for discussion is again, the mixed use neighborhood.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not proposing that.
Okay.
All right, so I have.
And it's not permitted in C1.
I have add conditional use permit under mixed use general, the UMS, and the Channel River Walk. You want it under Channel River Walk?
I would put it conditional.
Conditional, and even in the Channel River Walk district?
I would make it conditional in mixed use general,
Right,
mixed use UMS,
Okay.
mixed use CRW.
okay. And then add it as permitted under industrial.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right, duly noted.
Okay, moving to page 2.
bars and nightclubs.
Bars and nightclubs. Island Body Beach. Have a bar or nightclub? Or
I
propose
think
to
that's
add
a
that?
no-brainer.
It's a resort related use. You have to have
Yeah.
it.
And then the next one is restaurant. It was allowed as an accessory use in Island Body Beach. It seems like,
Needs to be permitted.
and there's also a note under the use standards. I need to go back one for nightclub or bar or nightclub. Under this section, it says a nightclub is not permitted in the golf course district.
I would say you don't want to include a nightclub in the golf course district.
Don't they already have a nightclub of sorts? I mean, they have 2 liquor licenses. They have,
Yeah,
it,
I think we need to accommodate that.
yeah,
In the middle of the neighborhoods?
it's there.
I mean, how,
It's there already.
Yeah.
They have a bar, restaurant, nightclub type thing.
They have events there. I live right next to it. I can attest they go till 10 or 11 at night with live music, and I have no issue with it at all being a neighbor.
well, is there restrictions on time if it's a restaurant versus a bar or nightclub?
No,
I think the issue that may come out of nightclubs would be if there's a lot of noise, and that falls under the noise ordinance of the city, if that's the concern.
I live there. I personally think it would be unfair to restrict that. There's a commercial corridor right there.
Well, it's accessory right now. I would just leave it the same.
Yeah, what is the difference between accessory and permitted, Luke? I mean, is there, if they decided to rebuild, let's take this to the extreme, let's say they were gonna rebuild the largest nightclub that Lake Havasu's ever seen. They'd have to do it out by Acoma because that's where their parking is. As an accessory use, would they have to come back for staff? Would they have to come back in front of planning and zoning?
It would need to make staff would need to make a determination if it would be considered an accessory use. And typically, an accessory use is an extra little use that's in conjunction with the primary use, the main use of the property. So it would come down to the scale. What are they trying to do here? How much is it becoming more than an accessory use? Is it more becoming a primary use? If that's the case, then it's no longer an accessory use. So it's one of those squishy areas.
I mean, from my standpoint, though, the golf course is always going to be the primary. I don't care what you put on that property, it's always going to be the primary revenue generator. So isn't anything else an accessory use at that point?
That's a good question. It's going to come down to what's being proposed We have to examine that and make a determination.
I mean, the benefit for the golf course is they could have a significant additional profit center that is open after the golf course is closed.
Yeah, I don't think you need to change it.
I guess walking through it, I don't think whether it's accessory or permitted is going to change the impact or impact them on their ability to do that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think we're good then.
At this point, the code reads, a nightclub is not permitted in the GC district as a use. It's allowed as an accessory use.
Okay.
And then the restaurant, under these specific use standards, it says in the IB district, the use only permitted as an accessory use to a permitted or approved conditional use. So I'm presuming we'll strike that out because we're saying it should be allowed as a permitted use.
Correct.
So
Yes.
this require an edit to that section of the code.
Yep.
Okay.
I think there's a consensus on that.
Luke, I don't mean to cause more time out of our
Yes, you do.
day, but could you read the definition of island body beach? Because I think there's some conflicting stuff in there. Like, we call it just permitted. There's only a few of those properties that are zoned, and would we really allow somebody just to build one restaurant on there when you read the definition of this?
You're looking for the intent of the Island Body Beach District
Yes.
overall? Okay, thank you.
I could be wrong. I'm just going off the memory. I mean, I don't know why we even put that into the code if we weren't going to allow hotels and restaurants and things of that nature for resort related. But
So the Island Body Beach purpose is this unique district applies to the island and body beach areas, most of which are owned and regulated by the state or federal government agency. The intent of this district is to permit all uses required by the state law and to encourage the uses of those lands that are consistent with the city's general plan. The district serves multiple purposes, including making the city's natural, historic, and recreational resources publicly accessible, encouraging high-quality resort and lake-oriented resorts and tourism-related development, and promoting creative and context-sensitive site and building designs that conserve and accentuate the natural landscapes.
thank you for doing that. I'll take back what I said. I think it's fine as a permitted use.
Which one was that? That was,
That was the island body beach as it relates to a restaurant, going from accessory to permitted.
yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay.
And this, just going down one more line, the same thing with hotel. I mean,
Yeah,
the hotel, I don't see how that could be the accessory. That has to be the primary use anyway.
right.
And it also says hotels, motels, and conference facilities as an accessory use to the golf course.
Which is the way it is now.
Going back to that, Luke, I mean, if they come in and they want to do a hotel on the golf course, and the hotel generates a lot less revenue than the golf course does, and it helps supply more revenue to the golf course, that by definition is an accelerated use, right?
Well, that would again depend upon what the nature of it, the scale of it. I mean, I would think from a planning perspective, at what point is this proposed, if it's a conference facility, hotel, or motel, at what point is it becoming the dominant feature of the
That to me is a
property?
classic bolt on to a golf course, where you do that on purpose because you have large open spaces. Conferences and stay in plays are very, very common at golf courses to promote the golf. So to me, that's the reason I brought that up, is that is a classic to me definition
classic
of an
accessory.
accessory. Yeah.
At this point, it's as an accessory use. What we're saying, if let's say the golf course, heaven forbid, went away,
I like it as an
and the golf
accessory
course
use.
zoning was there.
It's perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that, because I'm talking to staff and we're talking about what an accessory use really is. And to me, that's an ideal example of an accessory use.
To the golf course.
Yes.
Okay, resort.
And I'm sorry if I may, under that, hotels, motels, there was another note here. In this commercial health district and in the island areas of the island body beach, conference facilities are only permitted as an accessory use to a permitted or approved conditional use permit. And that, if we're allowing it, it seems like that should be struck out.
Yeah, because it's permitted.
Just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Okay, moving along to
Resort.
resort. Permitted in the MUUMS and accessory to golf course. Everybody go with that?
Why wouldn't you allow it in commercial Southgate? Well, depends.
I think if you got into the definition of resort, you'd have a really hard time finding a piece of land big enough in the Southgate district to even
Yeah.
accommodate that.
Yeah,
Probably
you have to
right now.
assemble properties.
Okay.
Moving along to, under office, business, art, or vocational schools, outright permitted in the MUUMS. I don't see a problem with that. Anybody else? Okay, that's good. Medical offices and clinics.
Could you add a conditional for Riverwalk?
We're back on business, art, and vocational schools.
Yeah.
I like the conditional on Riverwalk.
Okay,
Noted,
Yes.
thank you.
put a C at Riverwalk on business, art, or vocational schools. Where were we? Medical offices and clinics. Permitted in the UMS. Anybody have a problem with that? Same thing below with research and development laboratory, permitted in the UMS. Moving along to indoor recreation or entertainment. Adding permitted under Island Body Beach. Permitted under, what was that, P1? And accessory for golf course.
I would also add conditional or even permitted under industrial. If you got an old building that's just sitting there, someone wants to turn it
I
into
would agree with that.
indoor soccer or indoor paintball. or
Indoor
whatever.
roller rink, whatever.
Yeah.
So we're gonna add permitted under industrial for indoor recreation.
Noted, and then this one also has a comment. It says in the IB district, Island Body Beach, this use is limited to the island.
No. Anywhere.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to outdoor recreation or entertainment. We're striking accessory from mixed-use neighborhood and adding permitted to Island Body Beach and AP. Excuse me, changing that to accessory.
Under the AP, it's going from accessory to permitted,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and then adding accessory to golf course.
Okay. All right. Golf course by definition is outdoor recreation. Moving down to studio. Permitted in the CRW and permitted in the Island Body Beach,
What is a studio?
like an art gallery.
Studio is an enclosed space used by anyone engaged in artistic employment or instructions of painting, sculpture, photography, music, dancing, dramatics, literature, or similar activities.
I think you've got to put a conditional on industrial too on that one.
Why?
Because
Someone wants to put a studio in the industrial district?
the world's changing, man.
Yeah,
People love,
Otterbach Lane.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
He's welding stuff all the time for us.
People love, I mean, look at the Desert Bar. It's not a good location, but because of its appearance and what it's all about, it's packed all the time. And if
I mean, at the end of the day,
That's not a studio, that's a bar.
I'm just saying, if
aren't we allowing it in the other two industrial?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't we allow it in the industrial? I mean,
don't-
just a straight up P. We already have a P there for light industrial. I agree with you. I don't think anybody's going to necessarily go into an industrial zone looking for.
But if someone's
studio,
gonna,
but
if someone wants to invest in creating one.
It certainly couldn't be adverse to surrounding manufacturing, right? That's all we're trying to do is protect surrounding land uses.
It's fine with me.
Okay, we got Jim
Would
to
you
say
just
yes.
say permitted or
I said fine, yes.
P?
P.
P.
The other ones are P. I
Yeah.
don't know how you go from P in light industrial to conditional use and heavy industrial.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, are we good there? Theaters and auditoriums, permitted in Island Body Beach. How'd you get yours to scroll?
I can do it with my finger.
Yeah, mine doesn't.
You're on the other side, so.
Theaters and auditoriums. AP is what again? Agricultural.
AP is agricultural preserve,
Documents.
agricultural and preserve, actually.
Learn something new. Okay, where are we now?
We're on the bottom of page
We're,
2.
I believe we're on theaters and auditorium.
Top of page 2.
Theaters and auditorium, we're good with the permitted use in IB. Then we go to retail, alcohol beverage sales. Permitted in commercial CHD. And adding permitted to industrial. Permitted in the P1 and accessory to GC.
I'm okay with those changes.
Anybody have any concerns?
All good.
Gas station, fuel sales, convenience store with fuel sales, and general retail. Oh, that's the next one. So let's do the gas station with fuel sales.
All right, thank you. This one needs a little more explanation also. So this is an item that's also intertwined with light vehicle maintenance and service. I'm going to backtrack. The light vehicle maintenance and service includes gas stations because back in the day, a service station was where you'd go. When this code was written years and years ago, and originally definitions were done, service stations where you go get your gas and your mechanic then would fix your car and that sort of thing too. Now, obviously, times have changed, and those roles have split up for the most part. Most gas stations don't do a lot of service work other than incidental stuff. So what we're proposing is a new definition for gas station, and it's a facility having pumps and storage tanks where fuel, gasoline, or oil or other similar products are dispensed, sold, or offered for sale, and where vehicle repair or service is minor and incidental. Also includes gas stations with convenience store retail. And then the current definition of light vehicle sales or repair, we propose to revise that to basically get rid of the sale of fuel and facility pumps. We're saying it's a facility offering vehicle repair and maintenance activities such as engine tune-ups, oil change and lubrication, brake and muffler repair, tire rotation, glass replacement, and other stuff. Striking out other stuff, it also allows body work or painting or major engine or transmission repairs. Basically, this is the current definition of light vehicle service or repair. What we're saying, let's take out stuff that deals with gas station and make a new category called gas stations that has very minor incidental repairs, and then that way, because gas stations would be allowed in the same zoning districts as light vehicle service and repair. So those uses would still be allowed, but we would break them out and separate them.
Luke, along those lines, what was the old standard for a C-store and gas station when we had C1 and C2 before we had all these things? Because I'm looking at Southgate District and I'm thinking that's more of a C1 district, or it used to be.
Okay.
And we're changing it from conditional, but if we allowed it in C1 anyway, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. To my recollection, it was always a C2.
Yeah, gas station, we don't currently have a definition of gas station that falls under light vehicle sales light vehicle maintenance. And so light vehicle service or repair is what it falls under right now. So we're gonna, if you don't mind, we can jump down here a little bit. Here's a light vehicle service and repair. And it's permitted in the commercial Southgate district. It is permitted now. So a gas station could locate there, but there are sometimes other complications with the parking in common and those sorts of things with that. But what we're suggesting is the gas station fuel sales basically be allowed in the same areas as the light vehicle service and repair. Let's see here, if we compare those two with some exceptions. We're saying that a gas station is probably less intensive use than a repair facility. A gas station's more, it's not like mechanics and a lot of noise and that sort of thing with a gas station. And it allows retail sales as part of the gas station. So we're suggesting that the gas station, as we know it now, can, with or without convenience sales, be conditional use permit in the UMS, and then permitted in the commercial Southgate district, and then permitted in the C2, and then of course allowed to be continue to be permitted in the industrial areas. Conditional use permit still in the C1, and that kind of goes along with the light vehicles service and repair, which is a higher intensity use. So we're saying leave those where they are, where they're allowed now, and then also allow that in the island body, no, not island body beach.
In the industrial.
In the industrial. So those two kind of go together. And then in conjunction with these proposed changes, adopting or recommend adoption of the new definitions.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, that makes sense to me.
Good job, Luke.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I do have a question though. You're changing from oh, that's a marina. Okay, never mind. So those are good, Luke.
Okay, thank you.
Also changing the definition.
All right.
General retail. We're adding accessory use to industrial. Why wouldn't you allow general retail in industrial? If somebody wanted to put retail there. I'd make that P
I would
permitted.
too.
All right. And I believe there's a definition change. Let's see, was there something on that? Also edit the definition of general retail to include household pets. We don't have a pet store definition, and that would then mean if you have a pet store, it just fall under general retail. So any of these zoning districts that allow general retail small, general retail large, those would also allow a pet store.
Why don't we have a category pet store?
Because, well, we could have that, but
You have to have categories for everything then.
My only question is if they're boarding, if they're selling animals, then aren't they boarding animals, and doesn't that fall back then into the category we talked about before for boarding animals?
that's a good question, how you would classify that.
That is a good question.
Yeah,
I think out at the mall, PetSmart at the mall, they sell animals, they have animals there. I don't think of that as a boarding facility, but it kind of, yeah.
They groom and they
do that too.
They probably do sell.
And that's in a retail setting, if you will. I mean,
Yeah, I just
What
leave
is that?
alone.
That's C2 now, right?
It is now C2, but when it was in place, there was a PD out there when it originally moved in, but
I think, yeah,
But
there's
it's all C2, so
they're
we
either
need to make
C2 or
sure that
C2 PD still, yeah.
we need to make sure it's permitted in C2.
Yeah, the general retail is permitted in C2.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And so we're changing general retail accessory to permitted in industrial.
In industrial. And
Okay?
are we okay to amend the definition to include household pets for general retail?
I don't have a problem with adding household pets to that.
Yeah.
No horses.
That's not a household pet.
Okay.
Well,
Luke,
yeah,
do you
you're
want
right.
a horse? Do you want a
You're
horse for
right.
Christmas? You've mentioned horses quite a bit today.
A pony,
A
actually.
pony?
Yeah.
Pony.
Okay. What kind of pony?
The ones they let on airplanes these
Go
days.
sit on Jim's lap. Tell him about it.
All right, general retail, small. We just did that. Light vehicle service or repair, we did that. Let's go back up to car wash. That's the next one, car wash. Conditional use in the C1. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay. Heavy vehicle and equipment sales.
What about car wash and industrial?
It's permitted.
It's permitted in light industrial, but not in industrial.
Sure it is.
It's just not permitted in the Island Body Beach, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Heavy vehicle and equipment sales, permitted in light industrial, permitted in. Why is it a conditional in C2?
I don't know, maybe we should look at the definition, see how that. It's called heavy vehicle. All right, heavy vehicle and equipment sales, rental, or servicing. The sale, rental, leasing, servicing, storage, and repair of heavy vehicles and equipment typically used in agricultural, commercial, and industrial operations, including but not limited to trucks with a gross vehicle weight of more than 10,000 pounds, boats, buses, semi-trucks and trailers, loaders, construction equipment, manufactured homes, which is odd, and recreational vehicles. This use also includes incidental offices and the sales of parts for heavy vehicles and equipment.
I now know why it's not included in C2.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
needs to stay.
Thank you.
It's nice to have definitions.
Yep. Okay, so I lost my place. So we're good with the changes for heavy vehicle. Light vehicle sales or rental, outright permitted in industrial. Adding that. Should be no problem with that. Light watercraft sales, rental, or service, striking adjacent to water, conditional use for MU general. Conditional use for CRW. Permitted in the Southgate District, the C2, light industrial, and conditional in Island Body Beach. Anybody have any problems with those?
Nope.
No.
Okay, we're good. Moving on to marina. Change it to permitted in Island Body Beach. Yes, Mr. Still.
I assume that's because there's a bunch of state land out on the island and there's a possible marina.
Well, previously it was considered an accessory use. I wonder what a marina is an accessory use to.
Yeah, the water.
Yeah, it's a good change. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, last one on that page, parking facilities. We're making, instead of accessory, we're going to make parking permitted in industrial. That's a no-brainer.
And I've got a note here on that one also. In the commercial Southgate District, this use is limited to short-term facilities, allowing vehicles to park for no more than 24 hours. And in the IB, the Island Body Beach District, this use is limited to the island, and it must be a public facility. So we're saying a parking facility, which is parking, paid parking lot basically, In the Southgate District, you can only park there for less than 24 hours. And the Island Body Beach, limited to the island, and it has to be a public facility. Which I guess,
Anybody have any questions about that?
I'm not sure if that means owned by the public. I would assume that's what that means.
Jet ski races, people are parking out on the island and they're charging for it. Is that what this is covering, basically?
Well, that sounds like a rogue activity to me.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Parking facilities seem like they're almost always ancillary, except in big cities, but I don't have an issue with the change. I was just curious.
Well, the questions come up with that code section there, whether there's a need to change the specific standards for that, for the Island Body Beach in the Southgate District.
Doesn't that make it conditional?
I don't understand the question, Mr. Bergen.
With the definition you have here, where the use is limited and whatnot, where the use is limited, doesn't that
It's
make
just limited. I wouldn't say it's conditional, it's just limited.
I don't see any issue with it, Jim.
Do you have an issue with any aspect of it, Mr. Bergen? Okay, we're good.
So leave the section as it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the next page, last page.
Wait, but for the parking facilities, you're gonna leave in the notes in the section, those are staying with those limitations? Is that what you're saying? I mean, the permitted and accessory, fine, but as far as in the CSGD district, it's limited to short-term facilities, which I don't know why, so if there's a reason for that, that's great. And then the other one is on the Island Body Beach district, it's limited to the island and must be a public facility, which doesn't mean anything, like to me.
Yeah, I don't get the definition of that either. I would be okay, Luke, taking out, unless there's a reason that we want short-term
Strike the
facilities.
definition, period.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, duly noted. Thank you.
Strike the definition. Now the last page. Moving down to recycling small collection facilities, accessory and mixed-use general.
It was showing permitted, and now we're saying it's an accessory use. And a small collection facility is something believe it's no more than 350 square feet. It's like a little neighborhood collection for cans and generally cans and things like that, maybe paper. But
Anybody have a problem with that? Moving on to accessory automated teller machines, ATMs. Just making it accessory everywhere.
Yeah.
So adding accessory to industrial, AP, and golf course. Accessory caretakers quarters. Accessory across the board from commercial CHD all the way through. Anybody have a problem with that?
No, but it says we need to create the definition. And my only issue when I was reading through this was, I want to be careful that we don't make storage units, like each individual storage unit be able to consider to have their own
Their own
caretaker.
No, we-
Definition probably can just limit the number of caretaker quarters on any given site, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so one per site,
yeah.
and it has to be residential type. It can't be within the actual storage unit.
Well, you can convert a storage unit to a residential apartment.
So how do we define that?
Do we need to?
If I may, we do have some proposed language for an accessory caretaker's quarters. So this involves two new sections, a new definition for it, and then a specific use standard that would go over on the far right column. So what we're proposing is it'd be a dwelling unit used for 24-hour care, supervision, or security, which is accessory to an operating non-residential primary use and occupied only by the custodian or caretaker. So that's the definition. And then under the use-specific standards, it goes into more detail. And it's saying that it's a dwelling, the dwelling shall be conventionally constructed and located above or to the rear of the principal building. The area of the structure used for the caretaker's quarters shall not exceed 600 square feet. That's just, the 600,
We add a quantity.
we can certainly modify that, yes.
I like your definition. I think we could strengthen it by saying that it would be limited only one caretaker quarters per site.
And that would probably be appropriate, more appropriate under, that's a very good suggestion. I would suggest we incorporate that under the use-specific standards, where you say only one per property, per
Site, probably.
site. I
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, the idea is like not to
Because
have a
you
whole
can't-
bunch
you
of them.
can't, like to Chad's point, you wouldn't be able to convert all your storage units into
Yeah.
condominiums that are caretaker quarters, because they wouldn't be accessory anymore. So I think that would cover it.
I do have an exception to the location. Need to be located above or to the rear of the principal building. On some of these storage units, the caretaker facility is usually right up front next to the office.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of limiting there.
Does the commission have a preference, or just say, just located?
Can I hear your reasoning for inserting that language?
Well, typically, these are allowed in, we're saying, these are accessory uses in all zoning districts. So if we have a C2 property and the caretaker's quarters is right up front, like a little residence up front, it doesn't seem like a commercial use. It seems more like a residential use.
I would see
And
that
that's-
an RV park would have that, and that's considered, I guess it's not really residential or using it as residential, but it's in a commercial, non-residential zone, so it would fit within this.
We're certainly up to modifying it.
I don't see the need to specify where the caretaker's facility is.
I don't either.
Or can we leave that up to staff upon application? I guess not if it's a
Well,
accessory use.
Yeah.
Why
It'd be
was it set up
clearer
to
if it was,
600 feet maximum?
and that's the other thing that's up for discussion. What is an appropriate square footage of an accessory
If I buy
caretaker's
land
quarters?
and build a golf course, and I wanna build a quarters for my employee, why am I,
Caretaker's house or facility.
whatever, so I wanna build for him on my property, why am I limited to 600 feet?
And that's a good discussion item, yes, sir.
I think when it's an accessory use, the reason for that limitation, that I think it makes sense is because it is an accessory use. And so you're not building a primary type of thing there. So 600 might be a little bit limiting. Maybe we'd call it 750 square feet or 800 square feet.
Well, yeah, you can get a bedroom and a bathroom and a little kitchen and a
But if-
living area.
Let's go one step further. If the caretaker actually, as a family, you know, like a wife and a kid, or the wife does it and it's got a husband and a child, it's not just limited to that one person. And they might need some additional square footage or something. I mean, that's personal preference type thing.
Yeah, and to that point, a lot of these areas we're putting it into are mixed use with residential components in there. anyway.
Yeah, so
So they
it,
would be able to build it.
it's moot.
Yeah. Except for in the industrial zone.
Yeah. I'm not sure we need to
I don't think you need
regulate
to-
that. Location and size, I don't think need to be considered.
I think that's up to the owner of the golf course and who he puts
Yeah.
in there,
And I
Well,
think by taking that out,
within
it gives
reason.
staff more
huh?
discretion.
More
to submit a permit.
flexibility,
They can
yeah.
say this is not accessory, it's primary.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm hearing if the use-specific standard here, the dwelling shall be conventionally constructed. We could even just add that to the definition. If we're not gonna have, in my mind, if we're not gonna have other
Yeah, we don't need it.
criteria, then we don't necessarily need this other section. And we could say
And it still has to be
a
permitted.
dwelling,
And even
conventionally constructed dwelling.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
That doesn't even say anything. It's conventionally constructed out of steel or framing or, you know, wood framing or what?
I like the first paragraph, and the second paragraph could probably just go away.
Yeah.
Well, part of conventionally constructed is that we're trying to get away from possibly a manufactured home or a park model or something like that.
Couldn't you
So-
argue that a manufactured home is conventionally constructed?
I think there may be some tweaking for that definition. What do you
Yeah.
think would be a better
I-
phrase than conventionally constructed?
Compatible.
I would say
Construction.
site built,
Site note.
site built instead of mobile.
Yeah. That probably fixes it all.
Boom. A site-built dwelling unit used for 24-hour care, supervision, or security, which is accessory to an operating non-residential primary use and occupied only by the custodian or caretaker and/or family, or is that,
Custodian caretaker's fine, I like your.
Custodian or caretaker, and the caretaker, if it comes with the family, it comes with the family, you know?
and we do not want to, we're not going to have a maximum square footage?
No. That's gonna be up to the business owner, and they're gonna wanna limit the amount of space they use up for caretaker's facility.
Wouldn't it come down to staff's decision if they put a 3,000 square foot house with a 500 square foot shop in the back? They can't call that accessory anymore. You're going to say, no, that's not.
That's the
accessory."
primary
You know,
use.
and that's kind of come up already. And we've said, well, this is not a commercial use. This is a big house and you have a garage underneath and you're calling it a commercial business. It's not. It has come up, and yes, because this is laid out as approved as an accessory use, so there has to be a primary commercial use operating at the facility, at that property. So yeah, you're right.
So are we good with the,
And it just needs to say one
A single-
caretaker's.
What,
single
a
caretaker?
single site-built dwelling unit used for 24-hour care, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, moving along. Accessory drive-in or drive-through. We're adding accessory to,
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, need to interrupt. I'm sorry. Along with this, at the very beginning on page 1, under dwelling, live, work, this letter P under light industrial, that permitted was anticipated to allow a caretaker's quarters. So I would suggest we should remove that P and just strike that out, because dwelling, live, work is not really appropriate in the light industrial. That was there because,
Going back to our other conversation earlier, I would agree with that.
so this P here would be taken care of as an accessory use for a caretaker's quarters in the light industrial.
Light industrial does allow mini storage.
So they would be able to get a caretaker.
so change that P to an A?
Change that P to nothing. It'd be blank, and the caretaker's quarters would be taken care of down here.
Okay,
But then you're not allowing someone that, if someone built a large mini storage complex and they wanted a caretaker's quarters, they wouldn't be able to do it.
yeah, yeah,
That's what he's saying.
under the accessory caretaker's quarters.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they added that
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I agree.
All right, thank
My
you.
apologies.
Thank you.
Can I go back up real quick, Jim, for
Where to?
marijuana cultivation facility? I've noticed that we have conditional uses except for ag, and we allow it conditionally in light industrial, but we don't have a C there for industrial. I don't have a problem with it being C, but it just seems like if it's allowed in light industrial, why would it not be allowed in industrial?
Correct.
Mhm.
Put a C there.
A C in industrial?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, moving along now. Accessory drive-in or drive-throughs. We're gonna add accessory to mixed-use UMS and accessory to industrial. Everybody good with that? Moving along, that's good, Luke. Moving along to accessory outdoor retail sales. We're adding accessory to mixed-use general, mixed-use UMS, and mixed-use CRW. Again to C1 and industrial. Also golf course. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, accessory residential care home. And that's only a definition change. What are our definition changes?
That's the same 6 versus 5. So my understanding,
We're
you'd
not gonna
rather
do
not
that.
mess with those, yep.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
if I may, I think we may have jumped over accessory outdoor dining.
Oh, I did. There's 1A there for golf course, which is a no-brainer. All right. So we're eliminating those definitions for the accessory residential care home. Accessory residential recreation facility. We're adding accessory uses to all the commercial and mixed use, all the CHD, and mixed use facilities. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Moving to the next category, accessory structure not for occupancy. We've got an accessory in the CHD, and then adding accessory to mixed use CRW, all of the commercial SGD, C1, C2, and light industrial and industrial, and then also P1 and GC. So that makes that accessory across the board. And we're going to make accessory use other customary accessory across the board. And then the only temporary one that we're dealing with is adding temporary to temporary real estate sales office to golf course.
They already have it, so they have a permanent one, really. That booth outside used to be the sales office.
Yeah.
Sold memberships.
Yeah, years ago. And that does it, right?
Well, I think that does it for our discussion. Maybe, is this the appropriate time to hear from the public? Anyone wants
Well,
to
that's
comment
what
on
I'll
that?
do. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on any of these changes? Hope we didn't bore you too much. But
Thanks for hanging in there.
anybody at all? Okay, I'll close the public testimony period of the hearing. Bring it back to the table for staff's discussion, recommendations, which we've already done, and/or a motion.
I
Mr. Still.
can't wait to hear Luke recite all these changes so that we
Eh,
can make
we're
a
not
motion
gonna.
to approve them.
Is that your motion to approve all these changes?
Yes, staff recommends amending it, what you've done, including the table 3-1, and any changes that we had to section 140303, and any changes to the definitions 140603, per your discussion, to be forwarded to the city council for their action.
Okay, we are now at the table
And
for discussion and/or a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the changes as described.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Still. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Nelson to approve all of the changes to the code definitions as discussed. Any further discussion? Okay, let's call for the question. Let's vote on it. Got to get to it. Just push your button right there. Right here. Yep. Wait for your screen to come up.
Motion passes.
Motion passed unanimously. Okay. The next item on the agenda is correspondence and announcements. Mr. Morris.
I don't have any, thank you.
Okay. Then the final item is the call to the public. If there is anybody in the public that wishes to address the commission on any item whatsoever, now is the time to do it. There is nobody for the call to the public, so I believe our
Mr. Chair, can I say something really quick?
Ms.
Thank
Gary.
you so much for what you did today. That was really great, and I know it was really long, and I know Luke worked so very, very hard on all of those changes, but watching you guys deliberate and go through that was phenomenal. So thank you for your time and efforts.
Good job, Luke.
It's our job.
Yeah, thanks, Luke.
What she said, yes.
Yeah, good job. So, thank you, Ms. Gary. Hearing nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yep.